Hi, Tali. Hi, Tali. My name is Mrs. Place, and I'm a teacher in Miami-Dade County Public Schools in Miami, Florida. I'm really happy to be helping you with your research project on teaching. So you first asked me, how did I get into teaching? And I'm going to tell you that I think that I have been a teacher in my heart for as long as I can remember. Your earliest memories for me are something along the lines of lining up my dolls and teaching them class and making my brother and sister also play school with me. And I definitely think over the years I've developed a philosophy that helps me teach or guides my teaching. My number one philosophy is that students can't learn unless you connect with them. And so the first thing that I try to do is always, one, learn my students' names, say their names correctly, and then find out something interesting about them. And I use the information that I have to help my students understand that I truly do care about them and that am interested in them, not only as their teacher, but as a person. So then when we connect, then my students, I feel, are more willing to produce and learn from me. I've taught at a lot of different schools. I started out teaching in middle school, and at the time it was called junior high school. And junior high school was grades 7, 8, and 9. Those were probably my favorite grades to teach. And I think that I'm a better middle school teacher than a high school teacher. I love teaching 6th grade especially. I'm currently teaching high school, grades 9, 10, 11, and 12, all 4 grades. And I teach ESOL, which is English to Speakers of Other Languages. I've only taught in Miami, but I'm doing something really exciting right now, which is teaching virtual school, and I teach students in China. So 4 days a week, I wake up very early in Miami, and I teach students who are learning English in China. So that's something different for me to do. One year, I had a really great job where I would travel to other schools, and teachers who were studying something specific had left their classroom, and I went into their classroom and taught their students for 9 weeks. All of my teaching has been in public schools. All of my teaching has been with Miami-Dade County Public Schools, but different schools in Miami-Dade County. I've taught both inner city, the most at-risk students, and in very fluent and areas of the district as well. Currently, I have a totally paperless classroom, so I'm using only digital tools in my classroom. All of my students have an iPad, and I wrote a grant so that my students could get the iPad. They weren't just given to me. So each and every one of my students has a great iPad that we use every day in class. I believe that students should direct the learning. So I don't look at myself as the teacher who knows everything and I have to give that information to my students. I look at myself more like a coach or a director, and I provide the opportunities for learning. I help guide or assist my students, but I don't think that I know everything and that my students have to just listen to me. If you walk into my classroom, my students are grouped in desks of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. They don't all face the same way in straight rows. And I believe that there should be a lot of talking and discussion going on in my classroom. This is very different from what my class used to look like. My class used to be about the rules. You were going to come in, you were going to sit down, you were going to have paper on your desk, you were going to have pencil on your desk. You weren't going to talk unless you were spoken to. I knew everything. I was going to tell you everything you needed to know, and you were going to give it back to me. So over my 32 years of teaching, my methods and my way of thinking have evolved. How do I know that I'm being effective? Well, If you were talking to my principal would look at data. My principal would look at test scores. My principal would look at assessments. My principal would pull all of those numbers and say, your scores are going up, therefore you're an effective teacher, or your scores are going down, therefore you're not an effective teacher. I think that that's important to look at data, but I also think that there are other ways that we can see if we're being effective. Do my students like coming to class? Do my students participate? Are my students happy? Do they want to be in my class? I think those are all ways that we can be effective, and I evaluate that, yes, by looking at the data, by giving tests and quizzes as well, but I also have conversations with my students, and I say something like, I didn't feel really good about that lesson today. Is there something that I can do better? Or is there something that you particularly liked about the lesson? One of the platforms that I use a lot is called Edmodo, Edmodo, and I have conversations with my students all the time on Edmodo. It's sort of like Facebook for teachers and students, and we can digitally talk to each other both during school and after school. And I ask my students a lot of questions about learning, but also about how they like to learn and did they enjoy the lesson. Now, I will tell you that I don't think that teaching is always about having a good time in class. And so it's not my job to entertain my students, but to make sure they're learning. So maybe my idea of effectiveness is a little bit different than what other people look at. What a great question. What obstacles get in the way of being effective? I think that students are the biggest obstacle, that my students come to school unprepared to learn. My students, as I said, are ESOL students, so they are learning English. Many of their parents have not had experience with the public school system, so they don't understand that students need to work both in school and out of school. My students come to school and they haven't eaten dinner the night before. And when you're hungry, it's really hard to learn. Some of my students are not interested in learning. They don't want to be in school, and they create discipline problems. And so time that I could spend on teaching, I have to redirect to spend on discipline. I think laws get in the way of being an effective teacher. There's all sorts of rules now on what I have to teach, when I have to teach, how I have to teach. And when I started teaching 30 years ago, while I was still held accountable, the accountability was different. I had more autonomy in my classroom. I had the ability to direct more of my teaching. Now my teaching is somewhat prescribed to me. My school, my district, and my state have rules and laws that say I have to teach certain things at certain times. In my district, we even have something called a pacing guide that says, this is what you should be teaching week 1. This is what you should be teaching week 2. And I think that gets in the way of me being an effective teacher. I maybe don't want to teach that the first week of school. So I think those are impediments to my teaching. Let me see what your last question is. It's a little long. What have my experiences been with standardized testing and programs like Common Core? Yeah, I've talked about that a little bit. In the state of Florida, we are not aligned with Common Core. We have our own Florida standards, but they're very, very similar to Common Core. I think there's both pros and cons to Common Core. I think that it's good. We need guidelines, and every teacher is different, and some teachers need more guidelines than others. But I'm going to refer back to what I said about those impediments to teaching, and I think that Common Core might be one of those impediments to teaching. I work around it by making the standards fit what I want to do. If I want to do a lesson on the newspaper, then I'm going to find a standard that helps me fit that into my lesson. If I want to do a digital activity with my students that's not in their textbook, I'm going to be creative and I'm going to find a way to do it. So there's a lot of great things about teaching. I think that teacher effectiveness and teacher evaluation is very much linked to standards, but good, caring, effective teachers can always find a way to make things work. So I hope this answers your questions for you, and if not, send me a message back or let's chat in person. Good luck with your research paper. Bye.